Rejection is one of the deepest wounds we experience in relationships, but when it comes from an avoidant partner, it often carries a hidden message. For them, rejection is not always the end. Sometimes it's a test. They push you away not just to protect themselves, but to quietly watch, will you still hold on? Are you still there if I come back? Attachment theory explains that avoidant individuals develop their patterns from early life experiences where emotional closeness felt unsafe or unreliable. Instead of seeking comfort, they learn to distance themselves. Psychologists like Mary Ainsworth showed in her Strange Situation study that avoidant children didn't run to their caregiver for comfort, they turned away, even though their stress levels were high inside. Adults with this style often repeat the same cycle. They withdraw, reject, or create distance, not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much. Modern research highlights that rejection and withdrawal are often defense mechanisms. By rejecting you, avoidants are not just protecting themselves, they're testing the resilience of your connection. They want to know if your presence is conditional, or if you'll stay steady even when they push back. This is why many people in relationships with avoidance feel confused. One moment they are shut out, and the next they're subtly invited back. It's less about cruelty and more about survival. Avoidants fear abandonment so deeply that they create the very distance they're afraid of, simply to see if you'll bridge it. In this video we will explore how avoidants test you after rejection, the subtle, often painful ways they check if you're still holding on, and what those tests really mean for your love and your heart. Please subscribe, like and share, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Your feedback and suggestions make this journey more meaningful and knowledgeable. Ignoring your efforts. The most beautiful part of any relationship is when one partner shows concern, care, and love. But with an avoidant partner, the first and most confusing challenge is that the closer you try to move toward them, the further they pull away. You make time for them, send thoughtful messages and care for their comfort and peace, yet in return, you often receive silence or a cold, detached reaction. This indifference can be heartbreaking, but in reality, it is often a test. Deep inside, they are watching. Will you stay despite my indifference? Will you still be here even if I give you silence? According to attachment theory, avoidant individuals learn from childhood that their needs or efforts may not be acknowledged. Studies by Mary Main and Mary Ainsworth showed that avoidant children didn't turn to their caregiver for comfort because they already believed their needs would not be met. As adults, this same pattern seeps into their romantic relationships. When you show care and they ignore it, they are subconsciously repeating that same childhood scenario. If I don't acknowledge your love, will you still stay or will you leave me? Research also shows that avoidants don't always do this consciously. It's often an unconscious test, part of their defense mechanism. They believe that if you stay despite their indifference, it means you are safe and reliable. But if you react with anger and leave, it confirms their deepest fear of abandonment. The psychological layer here is profound. They are measuring your loyalty and resilience. They want to know if your love depends only on their response, or if you truly feel unconditional. This test is both a shield and a trap. A shield because it protects them from vulnerability. A trap because by guarding themselves too much, they create even deeper loneliness. When you face their ignoring, it's natural to feel they don't care, but in reality, an inner dialogue is playing out inside them. If I push you away, will you hold on or will you let go? And that's why this first test is both the most painful and the most revealing. Through it, an avoidant partner is really asking whether you're with them only in moments of closeness or even in times of coldness. Giving cold responses. Another common and painful experience with an avoidant partner is that they often respond rudely or bluntly to small things. You speak to them with love or concern, and in return you get a one-word cold reaction, as if they don't care at all. This behavior can be heartbreaking for anyone, because naturally we look for warmth and reciprocation from our partner. But for an avoidant, this too is a test. Deep down they are wondering, can you tolerate my harshness and still stay close? Will you leave me even if I am blunt? According to attachment theory, avoidant individuals never really learn to express their emotions openly. Mary Ainsworth's research highlighted that avoidant children developed this behavior with their caregivers because they felt their emotions would not be acknowledged. When they experienced stress or sadness, they suppressed their feelings and appeared indifferent on the surface. In adult relationships, this same pattern shows up as cold or blunt responses. Modern psychological studies also suggest that avoidants often strengthen their emotional walls by using a harsh tone. This is their way of masking vulnerability. When they give you a cold or rude response, they are essentially pushing you emotionally to see where your breaking point lies. Can you still feel safe with them despite their harshness, or will you react and walk away? The psychology behind this test is that avoidants are subconsciously measuring loyalty and tolerance. They want to see whether you are connected only to their positive moments, or if your bond can endure their coldness too. But here lies the paradox: their harshness is their protective armor, yet this very armor often damages the relationship. Researcher Philip Shaver explains that avoidants often create mixed signals for their partner. Sometimes they allow closeness, and other times they suddenly turn cold. This inconsistency confuses the partner, but for the avoidant, it serves as an unconscious test. Can you stay with me even in uncertainty? When you face their blunt or rude responses, it naturally feels like insensitivity. But in reality, it is their way of covering vulnerability. Inside, they are really asking, will you still accept me even if I show you my coldness? And that is why this test becomes one of the most confusing aspects of the relationship, because the avoidance behavior pushes you away, while at the same time it silently checks your steadfastness. Creating jealousy or comparison. Another very common and confusing behavior of an avoidant partner is creating comparison or jealousy. Often they will intentionally praise someone else or deliberately show closeness with other people. It feels as though they are provoking you, trying to spark insecurity within you. But in reality, this too is a test. They want to see, after rejection, will you leave me or will you become even more clingy? According to attachment theory, avoidant individuals carry deep insecurities that stem from early relational patterns in childhood. Researchers Hazan and Shaver explain that avoidants often fear their value or importance will not remain intact in the eyes of their partner. That is why they sometimes resort to comparison. When they highlight someone else, what they are really wondering deep in their subconscious is, do you still value me even when I measure myself against another? Modern studies show that creating jealousy or comparison is a defense strategy for avoidants. They use this tactic to maintain a sense of power and control. Because when they see their partner's response, whether hurt and becoming more clingy or reacting with anger, it signals to them that their influence is still alive. This test temporarily soothes their inner insecurity, but in the long run, it undermines the relationship. Psychologists like John Bowlby point out that at the root of every attachment style is a fear of loss. For avoidants, this behavior of creating jealousy is simply an extension of that fear. What they are really thinking is, if I push you away or make you insecure, will you still stay? It's a paradox for them. They fear closeness, yet to confirm their own value, they test your emotions. When you notice your avoidant partner praising someone unnecessarily or highlighting their friendships and closeness with others, it naturally brings pain and confusion. But at its core, this is their inner test. They want to know whether, despite rejection, your connection with them breaks or becomes stronger. And that is why this test makes the relationship so fragile. Each moment of comparison or jealousy creates an invisible competition. The partner feels their worth is being challenged, while for the avoidant, it is only an unconscious experiment. The most important thing to understand here is that this strategy is part of their insecurity and their need for control. But for a healthy relationship, it's crucial to recognize this pattern and respond to it calmly. Returning casually after pulling away. One of the most confusing and emotional behaviors of an avoidant partner is that after a long period of silence, they suddenly come back casually as if nothing ever happened. You may have spent weeks feeling their silence, their distance, and their indifference, and then one day they reappear as though everything is normal. Sometimes it's a short text, sometimes a casual question, or even an unexpected meeting. But in reality, this too is a test. They want to know, are you still available? Will you accept me again without demanding answers? According to attachment theory, avoidants repeat a cycle of approach avoidance in relationships. When intimacy feels threatening, they pull away. But when loneliness or unmet emotional needs rise up, they slowly return. Researcher Amir Levine explains that individuals with avoidant attachment live in a paradox. They desire intimacy, but at the same time they fear it. This is what creates the pattern of pulling away and then casually coming back. Modern studies also show that an avoidance casual return is essentially a psychological measurement. They are checking whether, despite their silence, their partner is still safe and accessible. If you accept them without questions, it reassures them that their control and place in your life remain intact. But if you demand answers or express hurt, it re-triggers their fear. The deeper psychology here is that avoidants are measuring their partner's boundaries and tolerance. They want to know if the relationship survives only in closeness or even during silence and uncertainty. But again, here lies the paradox. Their casual return feels comforting for them, but for their partner it often brings pain and confusion. Psychologist Sue Johnson says, human beings are wired for connection, and disconnection creates panic. When an avoidant partner casually returns, for them it is a sign of safety, but for their partner it comes after enduring panic and waves of hurt caused by disconnection. That's why this test makes the relationship fragile and emotionally exhausting. When you begin to understand this pattern of an avoidant partner, you realize that their casual return is not the result of indifference, but rather a reflection of their insecurity and fear. Deep inside, they are really asking, even after my silence, are you still here for me? And this is the test that challenges both the endurance of the relationship and the loyalty of the partner more than anything else. Relationships with avoidant partners are often like walking through a maze. Sometimes you feel close, sometimes lost, and other times as if you're right back where you started. They're tests, ignoring your efforts, giving cold responses, creating jealousy, or returning casually after distance, are not random acts of cruelty. They are patterns born out of fear, shaped by attachment wounds, and maintained by insecurity. It's easy to take their behavior as rejection of your worth, but in truth, much of it is about their own internal struggles. Avoidants fear being abandoned, yet they also fear being consumed by intimacy. This paradox drives their actions. And while these tests may be frustrating or even painful, they carry a silent question underneath: will you still be there if I push you away? Understanding this doesn't mean excusing unhealthy behavior. It means seeing the human beneath the defense. When you recognize that their distance is a shield and their coldness is a mask, you gain the power to respond with clarity rather than confusion. You can choose patience where it's needed, boundaries where they are healthy, and compassion where it can heal. Ultimately, managing an avoidant partner's emotions is less about fixing them and more about balancing yourself. Love in such relationships grows not by force, but by consistency, calmness, and conscious choice. And sometimes the most powerful act of love is not holding on tightly, but creating a space where both you and your partner can breathe, heal, and slowly learn to trust again.